Hello, my name is Parker Jones, and this is my Enhancement 4 video. We will just go through all of the requirements and take it one step at a time here. Here's the vehicle management page, and we'll just go through the three new pages, and test the HTML and CSS. Whoops, I don't want to do that. Okay. So we'll validate local HTML. Looks good. Go back and we will validate the CSS. Maybe. Good to go. So if we go into the add classification screen, we'll validate the HTML again, not the CSS because they all share the same file. So we will go back and go to the add vehicle. And then we will test the HTML here. Good to go. Okay, so there is that. So now we'll just kind of show the responsiveness. If I make it skinnier, then it loses the checkerboard background, but it still has the necessary info here. So it looks good. Okay, so now we will go ahead and look a little bit more into the code. So it wants us to show the code in the controller file, which is right here. And we will talk about the switch case statements. So let's start right up here. So these switch case statements we left in the login one because that is still at the top right, is the ability to log in. We add the add class, which takes us to the add class page. The add vehicle takes us to the add vehicle page. And then we got the add the class, which is when you decide to actually add the classification. And so what that does is it makes a variable classification name, and it filters that data basically, and then it checks for missing data. So we're checking if it's empty, and if it is, then we say, hey, please type in a classification name, and it will bring us back to that same screen. And then we go ahead and assign reg outcome, add classification name. So it pings that function, and that function is set up to return however many rows are changed. So if it's 1, then it will take us back to that vehicle management page, and it will show us the new header, or the new addition to the nav list. If it doesn't return 1, then we ping the error, sorry, but your attempt to add a classification has failed. Add vehicle works pretty much the same way, except for with a lot more information. Classification ID, make, model, description, image, thumbnail, price, stock, color. It checks if any of them are empty, and if it is, it says to please fill everything out. Same thing, we're gonna have it return 1 if a row is changed, or if not, then a 0, and it will act accordingly. And then we have the default, which is the vehicle manage page. So there is that. Let me just make sure I showed everything I wanted to. And so basically, just with these switch case statements, it's kind of combining both the HTML or PHP, however you want to look at it, and the database things, which is the whole model view controller type thing. So this is the controller, and it takes stuff from the views right there, and then it also takes stuff from the model, these functions. So it's kind of the middleman between the two. So then we will go back to the browser, and I'll show just from a new tab, localhost PHP motors, and then vehicles. So you'll see that I don't need to actually go to a file or anything like that to pull it up, and it brings us to that page. Okay. And then we will go to the other two pages, and I'll show you how it's using the name value pair, action, add class. So it's not actually going to that specific page directly. And same with adding a vehicle. It's just the action add vehicle here. Okay. Let's see what's next. Okay, so now we'll go back to the code and we'll go to the model. And this, we're just going to kind of explain what this function is doing. So I have a function for adding the classification and adding the vehicle. They both basically do the same thing, except for one has a lot more parameters than the other. But we'll just do this for simplicity's sake. So this function, it takes one parameter, the classification name, and then it's creating a connection to the server or to the SQL, and then it's creating this statement. So first in the statement is we're going to insert into car classification. So we're telling it to find car classification and then find the classification names. And then what we're going to insert into it is the value of colon classification name. And so down here, we'll bind that value, this classification name value, or the colon classification name, to this the parameter that we pass through into this function. And then this PDO statement is just basically saying, hey, this is a string that we're doing here. And so then it executes it, and then we have a variable for rows changed. This is the whole thing I was talking about earlier. That way we can test if a row has been changed or not. If not, we produce an error, but if there is one row changed, then good to go. So that's what this whole rows changed thing is, because that at the very end we return whatever was stored into that variable. And the same thing happens with add vehicle, but with a few more parameters and variables. So that is how that works. So we're going to go back into here, jumping around a little bit, and we're going to actually add a classification. First, we're going to not add one. I'll just try to hit add, and it says, hey, please type in the classification name before submitting. So now we're going to listen to it, and we'll just add more trucks. Yeah, add. So it takes us back to the vehicle management page, and you'll see up here it has been updated to include that in the nav list. So we're going to do that same thing with add vehicle. So we'll just do car, cars. This is a car. We'll skip a couple here. Price $5, pretty good bargain. And there's 10 in stock, and we'll skip the color as well. So then we try to add, and it stays here, but it says, please make sure everything is filled out before submitting. So let's listen to it. So we'll try Nissan car. This is a Nissan. Image path, we have that no image PNG, so we'll just do that for both the paths. This one's a little bit more pricey, $10, and there's only one left in stock, and it is a nice green. And we'll actually make it a sports classification. Okay, so then when we hit add, it says you have successfully added your Nissan car. And then it keeps us in the add vehicle in case we want to add a new one. So now we're going to show and see if that actually did work. So we're going to go into the server. I'll refresh because we just added those. And you'll see in the car classifications, we have that more trucks here with a classification ID of 21. And then we go into inventory and we see at the very bottom, Nissan car, this is a Nissan, all that stuff that we just created. And you'll see the classification ID is 3. And just to make sure that is correct, 3 was sports, and that is what we chose. So looks like it is working well. Awesome. Thank you.